We want to solve the equation -4 plus 7.4d equals -55.8. 7.4d means 7.4 times d, and therefore the solution to the equation is a value of d that makes -4 plus 7.4 times d equal to -55.8. In order to solve the equation for d, we need to isolate d on one side of the equation, and because d is on the left side, our solution will be in the form d equals some value, again, that makes the expression on the left equal to -55.8. We'll go over how to solve this equation using two different methods. In the first method, we'll leave the equation as it is and isolate d on the left side of the equation, and for the second method, we'll first eliminate the decimals from the equation and then solve the resulting equation. Looking more closely at the left side of the equation, we need to undo this -4 as well as undo this multiplication in order to isolate d. Because there are two operations to undo, this is often called a two-step equation, where when solving a two-step equation, the first step is to add or subtract to isolate the variable term, which means for our equation, the first step is to add or subtract to isolate 7.4d, and the second step will be to multiply or divide to isolate or solve for the variable. We need to be a little careful about this equation. Because we have a plus 7.4d, it might be tempting to try to subtract 7.4 on both sides, but this does not work because the 7.4 is attached to the d by multiplication, not addition. But we can undo or eliminate -4 by adding 4 to both sides of the equation, which will isolate the variable term. So our first step will be to add 4 to both sides of the equation. Before we simplify both sides of the equation, I do want to mention we could change the order of the terms on the left side of the equation and write this equation as positive 7.4d, and then for -4 we can write that as -4 equals -55.8. So if this is helpful, we could also do this before we solve the equation. Let's go ahead and leave it in its current form, and now we will simplify both sides of the equation. The plus 4 undoes the -4, or -4 plus 4 is 0. So on the left side, we now just have 7.4d equals, on the right side, we have -55.8 plus 4, or if we want, plus 4.0. Notice here we're adding numbers with different signs. So the rule is we take the absolute value of both numbers. So the absolute value of -55.8 equals 55.8, and the absolute value of 4 is 4. And now we subtract the smaller value from the larger value, so 55.8 minus 4, 4.0. With the decimal point down, 8 minus 0 is 8, and 55 minus 4 is 51. So the difference is 51.8, but we use the sign of the number that had the larger absolute value, and because the -55.8 had the larger absolute value, the sum is -51.8. And the sign should make sense because the -55.8 is going to outweigh the positive 4. Now we need to solve the equation 7.4 times d equals -51.8, and therefore we need to undo this multiplication by performing the opposite or inverse operation. Dividing by 7.4 will undo multiplying by 7.4, so we divide both sides of the equation by 7.4. On the left side, again, dividing by 7.4 undoes multiplying by 7.4, and therefore the left side simplifies to d, or 7.4 divided by 7.4 is 1. 1 times d is d. On the left side, d is equal to this quotient where we have a negative divided by a positive. So the quotient is going to be negative. So let's put a negative sign in our solution, and now we'll just find the quotient of 51.8 and 7.4. So on the side, 51.8 divided by 7.4. We need the divisor to be a whole number, so we move the decimal point to the right one place to here, and we can do this as long as we do the same to the dividend. So we move the decimal point to the right one place here as well. Move the decimal point up into the quotient and divide as we normally do. Notice how we change the quotient from 51.8 divided by 7.4 to 518 divided by 74, which will give us the same result. Now we need to determine how many 74s there are in 518. I think there are 7. 7 times 4 is 28. From an exchange with the 2, 7 times 7 is 49 plus 2 equals 51. Notice how there are exactly 7 74s in 518 because 7 times 74 is 518. Subtracting, the difference is 0, and therefore this quotient is 7. But remember, our original quotient was a negative divided by a positive, so our solution is d equals negative 7. Now let's solve this equation again by first eliminating the decimals from the equation. Starting with the original equation, because we have at most one decimal place, we can eliminate the decimals by multiplying both sides of the equation by 10. This will be our first step. 10 times negative 4 is negative 40, plus 10 times 7.4d is 74d, equals 10 times negative 55.8 is negative 558. And now we'll solve this equation, and the solution will be the same as the original equation. So we first isolate the variable term 74d by adding 40 to both sides of the equation. Simplifying, negative 40 plus 40 is 0. So we have 74d equals negative 558 plus 40 is equal to negative 518. To solve for d, we need to undo this multiplication by dividing both sides by 74. Simplifying, dividing by 74 undoes multiplying by 74. So the left side simplifies to d, or 74 divided by 74 equals 1. 1 times d is d. On the left side, negative 518 divided by 74 equals negative 7. So of course, using the second method, we do get the same solution. Here we go though. Let's verify our solution by substituting negative 7 into the original equation. So let's verify that negative 4 plus 7.4 times negative 7, our solution, does equal negative 55.8. Let's simplify the left side using the calculator. So negative 4 plus 7.4 times negative 7, notice does equal negative 55.8, which verifies our solution. The left side is negative 55.8, and so is the right. So this is our check that verifies our solution is correct. I hope you found this helpful.